Well, we've got an action-packed powerhouse panel here, and this is all about the future of travel. And if we think about the future of travel, we think about the golden age of travel. And it's no secret that there's some substantial activities that are on the horizon that are going to really up the travel game for the United States in regards to the World Cup and then the forthcoming Olympics. Let's start with that. You know, I want to say mega events. I think we know what we're talking about. It's not only those. I'm going to ask you, XD Davis, to just kind of talk about the coordination that's required when one starts to look at that and trying to pull all that together to make sure that's a safe and an efficient experience for the traveling public.
Yeah, thanks. And first, let me say thanks for having me here today as part of this panel. So when we talk mega events, there's obviously a lot that goes into that. At U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we're well positioned to be a part of these mega events, whether it's something that's a national security special event where we're providing security on the ground or a law enforcement hat, or if it's about welcoming people to the United States to participate in these events, things like the World Cup, the Club World Cup that happened last summer, things like looking forward to LA 28, and all sorts of other events that happen in between. America's 250th anniversary this year. We want to be welcoming for people who are coming into this country, but there's a lot of coordination that goes in advance of that happening. And really the forefront of that for us is a security posture, right? You'll hear a lot from me today about how security breeds facilitation, like the ability to move people through our processes, particularly lawful travel at our ports of entry, is premised on a foundation of security. So there's a lot that we're doing, a lot of coordination. We're working with our international partners. We're working with our airline, our airport stakeholders. We're working with our local law enforcement on the ground. We're working with other government agencies to make all of this happen. But I think what you want to hear about today is how we're facilitating travel through the ports of entry specifically. And so I'll talk about that a little bit, what we're doing over the last year and a half. We've really doubled down on our investment in airport modernization efforts, recognizing that there's a lot of travelers from overseas that come through our airports every day. We process not just at our airports, but across our ports of entry about 1 million passengers or travelers every single day, and we do that seamlessly. There's a very small percentage of people who do get sent to secondary for extra examination. That's a part of our process to make sure that we're safe. We get a lot of advanced information about people before they come. And in the airport environment, that helps us move people more quickly through that process. So there's some things that we've implemented, like enhanced passenger processing, now at 22 different airport locations in partnership with the airports and the airlines themselves, investing in that technology. Right now it's focused on U.S. citizens, and it's a way to use technology to move them more seamlessly through the process, allowing our officers to have a better opportunity to ask good targeted questions if they need to from a law enforcement perspective, understanding that U.S. citizens are coming back to this country. This is the country that they have a right to enter, and from an admissibility perspective, there's not a question of their ability to enter. We're looking at whether there's a national security threat, whether there's contraband in their possession. Those are the risks that we're looking for. Other technology that we've implemented, we've augmented some of our mobile passport control. That's risk-based for other populations. Advanced information they can provide us their declaration. Canadian citizens, U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, and returning travelers under the Visa Waiver Program are eligible for mobile passport control. And then we have our trusted traveler programs, Global Entry, Sentry, and Nexus. And we're continuing to expand partnerships with other countries to bring them on board. Recently, we had Jordan, and Qatar added to that program. Israel recently, Australia just launched phase 2 of their partnership with us in December. We've got over 20 different foreign partner countries for global entry now. We've got over 17 million members of our trusted traveler programs, and we're really seeing great saturation. Close to around 10 to 12% of our total traveler population are trusted travelers coming through our ports, and that allows us to move them more seamlessly through the process. A part of our trusted traveler program also is what we call seamless border entry, a partnership with a vendor that's gone to 8 different airport locations over the last year to move people through the process more seamlessly on the move. Right now we're working with a camera that captures their photo as they're moving through the process. We're working on the next iteration of that already that will be truly integrated into the infrastructure and kind of capture people at speed without having to stop at a device. That'll be rolling out later this year. And we're really excited about what we do every day working with our partners to be prepared for these mega events, not just moving people through the ports of entry, but being prepared on the ground to support the law enforcement effort also.
Yeah, and let's talk about the port of entry. It was a good touch point on the partnership. And let's just talk about the actual checkpoint itself. Balaji, I'm going to ask you, right? You walk in there, it's kind of stressful, right? You're saying, okay, I'm going to be in TSA pre-check, and it's all backed up, and, you know, what's this clear thing lying over here? And a lot of different activity there can be very stressful. I know you're trying to make that as frictionless as possible, and you've got a lot of new technology that you're introducing. Can you just give us some highlights of what's happening in the airport even from a domestic point of view here?
Yeah. Again, thanks for having me here, Homeland Security Defense Forum. I really appreciate it. That's a good continuation of what the conversation has happened, right? The collaboration is extremely important for us. You know, a couple of weeks ago, our deputy administrator, Adam Stahl, had mentioned one key thing, which is the passenger experience, the customer experience, and the security. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It needs to be collaborative effort. One of the things that we are constantly doing is looking at the way the private-public partnership is going to happen. That is key to our element, even during administrator's conversation yesterday with the Congress, that she had repeatedly mentioned private-public partnership. And it's not 10%, 90%, it's actually 50-50%. So one thing we are doing is working with the airlines. You noted the touchless identity service, and the collaboration in that regard is with the State Department, is with CBP, where we are introducing a lot of these biometric identifications and seamlessly going through the checkpoint. You know, as you can see, the checkpoint is a big factor for us. When we talk about checkpoint, it's not just the identity validation. So we have introduced a lot of digital identity acceptance. So you would see the Apples and the Googles of the world being accepted, but also something that we are trying to do is alternate form of IDs, right? So what are those alternate form of IDs? Whether it is a pre-check, we are working with our private partners to have a pre-check digital ID that could enable them not only to pass through, but also use that across the board for other vetted, trusted populations or trusted events. The other thing that we are taking a look at is as you go through the airport, you have so many different operational technology, whether it's baggage handling, whether it is explosive detection, whether it is the AIT machine, where you're going through the scanning tools. All of those are being constantly taken a look at. Mr. Stahl might have mentioned to you about actually networking all of those, because what we want to get to is a point of data-driven decisions. We need to know that the passengers are waiting. You pointed out, hey, what about the passengers waiting? We need to know where are they waiting, which one of these machines are down, and what is the health of that machine, the telemetrics of that machine. That's something that we are constantly focusing on. The other thing that we are focusing on is some of these things that like a cross-lane, remote lane type of a technology. For those who may not know this, like, can one airport located, miles away, many miles away. For example, Denver to say something like Sacramento or Houston, can they now take a look at those images and clear it so that we have lesser of those lines piling up? So we constantly work with the airlines to increase our footprint on touchless identity for pre-check. That has expanded quite a bit. We're working with our trusted registered traveler partners for e-gates. The e-gates is a big thing that we are trying to take a look at, the different types of e-gates that can be put in. We already have one of the partners that have worked very fast with us, in fact, expedited way, to put it in several of the airports. They've expanded to 30 airports. We are trying to take a look at our other partners that we have, whether it is through what we call as a seamless identity automation, where we can use the trusted identity from, say, Apples and Googles, to the e-gate providers, to the backend, We want to be in the business of making sure the identity and the vetting and the credentialing are all done properly, but we want to also partner with our edge device providers to provide those in an expedited way. So those are the various things that we are trying
seamless. And I guess I remember being in Houston and watching, I think it was a pilot program at the time, where they were coming in with, this is with CBP, entry, and they were walking up to this device, and it was going green, and it was so seamless that they were standing there, and the officers were saying, "You're cleared, go," you know? Yeah. Is that the expectation, that it would be something like that, that an e-gate would just be a fully touchless type of?
Exactly, and it needs to be both for domestic. Obviously, CBP is doing the international outward facing in. We are doing inward facing out. It is very much in collaboration with CBP, their identity services, in collaboration with State Department, their passport lookup services, things of that nature. I will tell you that the collaboration has exponentially increased, and we are actually trying to use that to our advantage to expedite the innovation, bring out that thing. And Mr. Stahl might have mentioned to you about sustainable innovation is what we want to go after. And, and that cannot be stopped. Like, between now and the FIFA time, we want to try to see as many as possible out there.
Absolutely. And speaking of tools and technology and advanced technology, and the ICIO, Dustin, was up here talking about a lot of AI use, et cetera. Tim, I wanted to throw it over to you and talk about some of the use of that technology in this environment, right, and what you all at State Department are doing in regards to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start to kind of take us up a notch, and then probably dive deeper. I think, AI, and as you mentioned, the acting CIO at ICE spoke a lot about this earlier. It's a lot about our data. So it starts with how do we make our data more accessible, both in modernizing our legacy applications, modernizing our IT, also helping our application, owners, application development teams by providing infrastructure and architecture that helps them do some of that standardization and normalization of the data. So that's kind of where it starts. Within the State Department and our journey related to AI, like many folks, I'm sure, we started with retrieval augmented generation, right? Let's bring data to AI tools, LLMs, and AI services so that you can get the benefit of quick summarization, the efficiencies of pulling a lot of different data sets together and then providing meaningful insights. So that's where we started. Next to that was introducing an enterprise AI chatbot we call State Chat, enabling our customers and our staff to use sensitive but unclassified information with these AI models. Huge efficiencies gained there. Then kind of from there, introducing trained data sets within that service so that folks had that information readily available. They didn't need to upload it. They didn't need to copy it into the service. So that's kind of where we started, and we continue to evolve in that space and make that available globally to the mission. From there, looking at, we talk about mega events, right? Looking at how can we have better accountability of our staff, of personnel, at the embassy around the world. And so leveraging AI services to bring more of that to the forefront and giving our staff domestically and overseas that availability to that information very quickly so that we can make data-informed decisions. So, those are a couple of the areas that we're working on. I'll jump back into kind of the data infrastructure because I am the technology lead. I think we heard earlier some talk about mesh data. I think one of the things that we're trying to do is introduce, and this is a little bit more old school, but introduce just on some of our legacy systems API first mentality, right? How do we make sure that the data that we have is exposed via API and done in a way that we can then implement kind of more modern and evolving technologies like Model Context Protocol, right, MCP, so that the data that is sitting within our third-party systems, those enterprise AI services, have the ability to connect to that in a more agentic, automated fashion. So some of the things that we're really focused on.
I appreciate that top line on the use of this technology to introduce itself into these environments. XT Davis, I want to go back and talk about this sort of frictionless type of experience, if you will. I think you said 10 or 12%, right, in the Trusted Traveler program. It means a lot that aren't, right? And I know there's maybe some advanced technology or looking at different technologies to make that a better experience as well. Maybe you could talk about that, sort of what are you thinking there, and what kind of help do you need there as you all are sort of dreaming up this, port of entry of the future, if you will.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just draw the distinction between our land borders and our airports for a second, because particularly our southern land border locations, we're seeing some places that are upwards of 50% volume of our Trusted Traveler programs, which is great, because those are the people who come across every day, they're the daily commuters. But in the airports, it's harder because a lot of people don't travel frequently, and so they maybe don't understand or see the benefit of being part of the Trusted Traveler program. But that's always the leading edge for us of where we're implementing new technologies. And so when I talked earlier about what the next modernization efforts for global entry are, we fully suspect that's the first place we're going to implement that ability for people to walk through at speed, but that shortly thereafter we're going to start looking at how we can assess risk and develop profiles for other travelers to be able to walk through, similar to what we're doing with enhanced passenger processing. They're stopping at a camera on a stick now and then moving through the process, absent any additional questions from an officer. But we're looking at layering things like AI into our internal processes so that the officers who have access to the information now but only have a limited amount of time to do a primary inspection. If I only have 20 or 30 seconds with a person, I need to ask the most targeted, most significant question first to get to a law enforcement conclusion there. And so taking all the information we have great targeting teams who put all that information together, but leveraging some of the AI tools to give a prompt to an officer to say, this is the question that you should ask, or indicate that you know this information, to see what the reaction is. The things that you see on TV and movies that you've seen for decades, like Jason Bourne going through an airport and they know who he is. Like we have the biometric backbone to know all of that, and we have a lot of the data, and so it's really just layering on those extra pieces to make sure that the officers are as efficient as they can. I think the other thing that I would add on here in the airport context is really about making a connection between the person and their bags. And we've been doing that over the last year to make sure through processes like our international remote baggage screening, part of the TSA one-stop security program, where we can get information about the X-ray images of those bags before they leave their foreign departure airport, and tying that together with a person to make a true risk assessment, not just of the person and what we know about them, but about the bags and the things that they're bringing with them. And putting that together, I think, is going to be huge for us, because really the benefit to the traveler and to the airlines at the end of the day is that when you're connecting through a U.S. airport from an international arriving flight, you won't have to claim your bags anymore, because so often we see that our processes become so efficient that people are standing waiting for their bags. I'm sure some of you have experienced that coming back internationally. And particularly if you're rechecking that bag onto another onward flight domestically, that's a lot of lost time. We're seeing 45 minutes time savings for travelers at the places where we've implemented the IRBS, the baggage solution, with our partners. And we're seeking to expand that more to make it more seamless, not just for the people, but for their bags and the whole process.
I was going to toss this over, of course, to Balaji and to XD Davis as well, to just sort of weigh in on this. Balaji, I know you all are sort of right in the middle of this. You talked about some of this. I'm assuming that part of this is tied to the license, right? I think, right? You're working with all the states. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So before I jump into that, a couple of things that I want to add on the AI portion as well.
Of course.
We're taking a very responsible step, and I know that Dustin had mentioned about data. The AI, just doing an AI without making sure we understand the authoritative data sources and the data cleansing is kind of like, we get into a point where it may be hallucinating, and then AI, is going to feed us the wrong result. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we are trying to do is align ourselves with the DHS CIO's, McLeod's, initiative on, the enterprise data fabrics, right? And the enterprise identity fabric. So some of these things are critical for us to share the data. So one thing that we have done is internally taken that action to ensure that we have a data strategy, we identify those, and then provide that visibility, and then working with the department for cross components to share the data. The other thing that we are doing is taking a look at the low-hanging fruits, especially with FIFA coming up, America 2250 coming up, and then ultimately it's going to feed into the Olympics LA 28, is what can we do with some of these improving our efficiency at the edge. For example, the officers are always looking for SOPs and the reviewing of that. That takes a long time. They're always looking for what is the latest of the management directives. They're always looking for what is the document of the day that they need to query. So those are the things that we are already doing. Contact center is another area that we are doing that. So it's very important. One thing before I jump into your question is, everybody please get your real ID. So we have a lot of conversation on that. Please ask your family members to get that. We haven't gone, we haven't gone beyond the 94 percent rate. There may be a reason because the teenagers are refusing to get their IDs. So please encourage them.
What happens if I show up at a airport and I don't have a real ID?
So right now, if you have an ID, that's an acceptable form of ID, which is not real ID. For example, the driver's license.
No, but a driver's license that doesn't have a real ID.
So you have to go and go to our location and pay a fee, so that we are collecting the fee as part of these things, to encouraging people to do that. If you don't have any ID at all, then we also do what we call as a TSA confirm ID validation through third-party tools like LexisNexis, and also working with CBP on their passport lookup and things of that nature that we are doing for identity validation. Feeds very well into your question.
So back to that question, the credentialing, the ID.
Yeah. So there's a lot of these credentialing questions are also, we are partnering with folks like Apple and Google. We are partnering with e-gate providers that already have collected information. We are looking for trusted partners in that regard, right? E-gates are going to become more prevalent, so we're not just going to stick to one set of e-gates. We are evaluating different kinds. What are they going to bring in, whether it is through a different mechanism of introducing them, like, for example, donations versus credas versus, evaluating things of that nature. So there is a lot of contract-related activities that are happening. So just like security is multiple layers, we are taking a look at all the layers of how do we introduce this innovation into it in identity management. Our biggest strength is going to be cross-component working with CBP, the State Department, with the trusted partners, with our registered travelers program. Global entry is one of them, with our pre-check, digital ID initiatives. Those are the areas by which we are keep increasing our amount of presence on digital identity, and how we are going to use it, how we are going to make it available for a seamless customer travel, right? So the other thing that is important for us to understand is the family and the military travel is very important for us. We have done a lot of those policy changes against it, so it's critical for our administrator and deputy administrator to pay attention to not just the technology, but also the policy that supports it and policy that enables military, active duty military, and the family members.
And really focuses on that ultimate customer experience. Aaron, I think you're back online here.
Yeah, let's see.
All right,
that works better.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
just from an industry perspective, give us your point of view.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add, and thanks again, Luke and HSDF for having me here. What I would add to what Balaji was saying is the standards, especially as you look across the mega decade of sport, the standards that all the different sponsoring organizations, leagues, and foreign partners are bringing for how they are pulling together essentially the inventory of who is planning and expecting to travel to the United States to participate are varied and at varied levels of depth. And looking at what can be done to create as much as possible a degree of consistency so that some of that travel demand is aligned to what the U.S. government agencies and components are going to ultimately need as formal process for a visa application or for ultimate entry at a port of entry happen. So just helping the organizations that are pulling these things together to think about what that looks like is going to be a big priority as we look at the next couple of years, and we're already in that cycle of the mega decade.
And by the way, I should have mentioned, I think, once again, we will have ample time for questions in about, I don't know, about 20 minutes-ish or so. We've got a few more questions up here that we want to plow through and some topics, but we'll give you all an opportunity to get your questions. So gen those up. Let's talk about just a full digital identity experience, right? You know, and this is for everyone on this panel, right? Because it kind of, in some cases, starts all at the State Department and works its way this way. Sometimes it goes the other way. You know, at what point do we expect to see that experience be a full digital experience, right? I've got a digital identity. It's hot on my phone, right? I'm going through a touchless, seamless experience, e-gate, right? Which maybe you can explain a little bit more from a kinetic standpoint what that actually looks like. And then back into the country as well, right? And it's just a full digital. And you know, let's be fair here. When you look at other parts of the world, that's really what you're experiencing, right? I mean, that's how they're rolling over there, good, bad, or indifferent. So, well, let me start with you, XD Davis, just from your perspective as to when would you expect to see, hey, we're just a full-on digital experience now, and we can take on as much of a percentage of that environment, trusted traveler or not, or maybe, you know, I don't know, I want to put words in your mouth. What's your thought process on that?
So I think there's value in digital travel credentials, but I think a lot of the infrastructure that we're built on already in terms of our biometric holdings has really allowed us to really leapfrog the digital travel credential need in terms of something that's stored on a device that's presented by a traveler. I think for us, because we have biometric identity verification capability, through facial biometric
It's a form
comparison.
Of digital, right? I mean,
yeah, sure. It's in our cloud, right? We've got it, and so I think that is, for us is the bedrock of what we're trying to do to make sure that we know who the people are that are coming into this country, and that all of the vetting and security apparatus that we have that goes beyond that is really founded on knowing who those people are. U.S. citizens working with the State Department to make sure we have the identities for people who have applied for passports, visas, and the biometrics that are collected overseas. Those are hugely important for us. But then expanding that collection in a digital way, which we're doing now for our ESTA travelers through the visa waiver program, being able to submit a photo and their fingerprints on a mobile application before they ever travel to the United States, so that some of these programs that we've talked about that are right now only eligible for returning travelers because we already have their biometrics on file, we may be able to expand some of those in the future to additional populations. Where our goal really would be to get to a point where we have the biometrics for everyone before they come in. We're going to be expanding our biometric collections to the land borders this year. We got some funding in the One Big Beautiful Bill last year to expand a lot of what we've already done in the airports environment. We don't have the capability today as it stands in vehicle lanes at the land border to take photos or fingerprints from people. That would just shut down commerce. But we're looking to implement some technology solutions that are going to allow us to do that. One of those things is putting the power in the hands of the individual. So something like mobile passport control that we've launched at our airports and been very successful over the last number of years. We're going to be launching that next week for pedestrians first in Blaine, Buffalo, Eagle Pass, Texas, and in San Ysidro. And then later this year, we're hoping to expand it to include vehicle lanes so that you as a traveler can take a photo of yourself, upload the information from your passport on your device, give us the license plate number, which is kind of the trigger as you pull into that vehicle lane so that we see everything about who's in the vehicle without forcing the officer to try to click a photo of everyone or to set up 17 different cameras from different angles to adjust for environmental conditions. A very simple solution that we already have the infrastructure for that will help us get to an increased saturation of travelers who have biometrics and are using those as their identity management to come across the border.
What's State Department doing in this area? I mean, do you see a point where as I'm looking for a visa or a passport, I just get a full digital version of this, or how's it gonna? Are we back to Jason Bourne again here?
I think as Matt was saying, it's our focus, and I'm not a consular specialist. I'm on the technology leadership side, but our focus is making the data that is necessary for all of our interagency partners to advance, whether it's biometric scanning, whether it is more of a digital experience, like making that data available in real time. That is a primary focus. Obviously, there's been a lot of work in modernizing, our consular services, modernizing passports, the physical passport in terms of like the digital data that is available there. Talking about visa processing, there's a lot of work happening there, certainly for some of the events coming up. Talk about FIFA Pass and coordinating with that organization to help those that have purchased FIFA tickets through the FIFA organization to quickly kind of go through visa processing ahead of the World Cup. So that's some of the stuff that we're doing. In terms of a full digital experience, we'll have to wait and see.
And from a TSA perspective, you talked about the e-gates. I'm assuming that's a whole digital experience there, if you will?
It can be broken down, right? The whole e-gate technology can be broken down into 3 parts. The part that TSA is fully responsible for is making sure the security aspect of it, the governance aspect of it, whether it's vetting, whether it's matching, and things like that are done through TSA, and we are taking ownership of it. But where we are, partnering with the private and also doing it on our own is the edge devices that captures the facial liveliness or the biometric data, and through either a registered traveler, trusted traveler program, or a pre-check program that is promoted by airlines and airports that is expanding, or through seamless identity, a third-party device that brings in the device and provides us those things. We write the specification. We say what security protocols and connectivity and all those things need to be there so that when they come in on board, they already know what they are trying to play with. And we are also working with our privacy office and our chief counsel's office to make sure what we are passing them back is very, very much in the area that meets all the policy requirements and other things so that they can do it. This has expanded, like, the rate at which we are collaborating right now is enormous. So if you break that down into parts, TSA is doing still some of these reusable assets and working with CBP and State Department in making sure those passport identity or facial identity and matching algorithms are all met, while we are collaborating with the private parties to integrate those e-gate for a seamless experience. I think that is where we want to drive, and you will see that more and more of that call.
Yeah, let's talk about partnerships. You can't do this alone, right? You all are scaling up in spades and just sort of transforming and modernizing these environments from tip to tip. But there's all kinds of partners. There's a lot of folks in this room that are partnering with you or would like to partner with you. I see Mr. Armstrong out there, and he knows this only too well about just partnering with the airlines, right, and the port authority, right, and the mayor of the port authority, right, those sort of things, and that whole environment. Let's just talk about partnerships and how does one go about brokering those types of activities, particularly in the overlay of what's getting ready to happen with the World Cup and with the Olympics not too long behind that. CBP, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think partnerships are crucial, and I didn't really do a good job at the outset of this about talking about the structure that we have for the World Cup. There's the White House Task Force. There's a number of working groups under the interagency coordination framework, and that's what the government is doing across government to make sure that we're all aligned. But really, the partnerships come down to operationalizing this at the end of the day and working with our airports, working with our airlines, working with our vendor partner communities to make sure that we're putting out the solutions that we need in advance of this travel. And I think the thing is, we've been planning this for years, and we're planning now years out from something like LA 28 because these are such important events. You can't really wait until the last minute to decide you want to change something. And I think a big part of that is also communication, right? Making sure that we're communicating appropriately, not just to our partners, but really to the travelers so that they know what to expect before they arrive. And our partners are a big part of how we get that message out. We can't do it as a government on our own. We really leverage our partners, especially in the aviation sector, to make sure that when people are checking in or when they're buying their tickets, that they know that they're going to need a visa, that they know they're going to have to get an ESTA. And so we're really focused on a lot of the communication aspect of things, working with our partners, and it's a two-way street, right? Because I think when we talk about our airport partners, We invest a lot in the technology we're going to use there, but we also go and ask the airports to invest in the infrastructure and into the space that CBP operates out of. And so there is a give and take, and we know we've got a lot of good partners out there that are willing to invest. It's on us to kind of make some of the business case for them so they see that there's return on investment. But some of it is pretty obvious, and even if it's not about an efficiency, a lot of the times we're talking about trying to find efficiencies and reducing wait times, but sometimes a lot of what we're talking about recently is about the experience of the travelers coming through. It's not just about getting through quickly, it's about making sure that they have a positive experience when they're going through not just CBP, but the rest of that airport experience, whether it's TSA or whether it's while they're getting their food at a restaurant or whatever. And so we're part of that ecosystem throughout the travel industry, and we want to be good partners. We're constantly communicating, meeting with industry associations, and trying to get our message out so that nothing that comes out, as much as we can, is a surprise to you in the industry.
Let me toss it over to TSA. I'm going to ask you all to take a bite at this, but let me start with you, Balaji.
Yeah, so the way the TSA has looked at it is, let's take a look at the layers, the checkpoint security, right? So when you go in there, you're providing your ID, there's that layer of technology there. So we are looking at every layer, what partnership and what can we bring in as an innovation. For example, in the checkpoint technology, identity validation, whether it's credential authentication devices out there, how are we partnering with the Apples of the world and the Googles of the world? How are we making sure their digital ID is there? How are we partnering with some of the providers that may be bringing in an MDoc? Like, are we making sure that our MDoc that we are creating that follows some of these standards and making sure that it can be reused everywhere else? Then we start layering into, hey, beyond that validation of identity, what are we doing with the baggage handling, the CT machines, the AIT machines? How are we partnering with them to introduce? For example, the walk-through metal detectors are now going in connected. So are we then partnering with the airport, and the network layers and other things? Can we get that back for real-time wait time type of understanding? How can we improve the efficiency? That goes back to your original question of how do we make sure that the lines are not building up and things like that. So we are partnering with there. We are actually partnering a lot with airports to say, hey, their CCTVs, can we use theirs and start using their data feed instead of we putting our out there and having that real-time wait time be provided back to us so that we can make some real-time data decisions, right? Data-driven, resource allocations and things. And then we go beyond it, the explosive detection units, whether it is baggage handling unit, can we do the efficiency? For example, we have an initiative called TSC Connectivity, which is Transportation Security Equipment Connectivity, which basically starts with the FIFA-related activity, broken down into what can TSA do, what can our partners do, and then what can we do as an open architecture, right? So we want to make sure it's available to the industry. For example, breaking down the CT machines into 3 parts, the viewer part, the capturing part, and then the AI part where there could be an algorithm associated with it. That gives an ability for us to invite people and bring them in. So all of these are combination of things that we are constantly doing beyond the component partnership, but also industry partnership, and looking at the layers so that we bring in the innovation and sustainable innovation.
A lot of different moving parts there. Aaron, let me ask you just sort of your perspective on this partnership game, if you will. And I want to ask all of you for just a moment, where do you need some help in this area in regards to partnership, please? And I'm gonna save you for standards here next. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. I think as you said, no one organization can do this alone. And what's really been great, as we've heard Balaji and Matt and Tim say this morning, is there's a lot of really great work that the public sector is driving forward that creates essentially the backbone that ensures that security and standards and a regulatory environment are in place that then allows that experimentation, innovation to really happen. And that's happening at all stages of the travel journey. If you think about in the context of the mega decade and the magnitude that we're dealing with, at pre-travel, I touched on this earlier, but at pre-travel, looking at ways that industry is. Yeah. All right. I think we're back. But looking at ways the industry is engaging to help make the travel planning more effective, and that pulls on what people are using to obviously arrange travel, but also how the organizations are coming together to make the process of getting into a travel event more seamless. And then during the travel, the experience that my colleagues have talked about is really changing how fast that is. And that, of course, creates opportunities for, upon arrivals and moving through a port of entry, you are now recovering time, which creates opportunities for economic activity, for commercial partnerships, for leveraging things that are going to be associated with these events, like fan, VIP, and other experiences that will make it a little bit easier to access. So, industry engaging on that, working closely with the public sector so that the traveler is now recouping the time that they've saved, that Matt was talking about, and they're spending money. They're engaging with the different features and services that are offered within the airport environment and beyond. They are preparing for their experience, participating in some of these events. And the goal is that these don't become point-in-time interventions, but that some of these things become the new normal as we kind of move through the decade of sport and beyond.
All right, we're going to hold on any partnership more conversation because we want to partner with you all and open up for questions for about 10 minutes or so. So fire away on questions. Who's got a question? Got one in the middle, got one over here.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for everyone's time. This question is for Mr. Davies. With the drastic decrease in cash seizures on the border, great job by you and your team. How crucial, in your opinion, is it for the frontline CBP officers to have a basic knowledge of crypto and its indicators when they have an individual in secondary, with the also trend of cartels and non-state actors leveraging crypto to conduct their business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when we look at all the different threats that we're facing, I mean, we are still seeing currency move through our ports of entry. Crypto is an interesting one for us because we know that there are indicators out there. A lot of it is, some of the work that the administration has done on designating cartel members as foreign terrorist organizations has really helped give us some additional tools at looking at electronic devices and doing forensic searches. But some of it is really just is very basic, is giving the tools to our officers in some one-pager sheets that we have to say, these are the apps to look for, these are the types of things to and having crypto doesn't mean you've done anything illegal. Let me just say that too from the start. But it's an indicator that there might be something else there, and so it's part of the whole assessment of risk as we're looking at a passenger and giving us, if we need to dive deeper, if we have to establish probable cause to get to a point where we're delving deeper into that. But it can open up a line of questioning. And so making sure that the frontline officers, as you pointed to, have that awareness at the very start. And I will say when we talk about searches of electronic media devices at ports of entry, there's been a lot of, over the years, kind of angst about what we do, but we see that percentage of overall inspections really has stayed pretty static. I think over the last year, people have, because of cases being highlighted in the media, have had this sense that, well, CBP is cracking down and we're looking at more devices. We have a very stringent policy for our officers about what they can look at and why they can look at it. And what we're seeing is not, in fact, like a huge increase. It's we're being more targeted. We're being more efficient at what we're finding. And in virtually every single case, including the ones that are highlighted in the media, when people are complaining about us looking at the devices, whether it's for crypto or for child sexual exploitation material or national security affiliations, there's a reason, and there's something underlying that is at the bottom of it. We don't just go around randomly looking at people's phones, but that's a good point. It is something we're tracking, and there's a lot of tools we have on the back end to work with our partners in the federal law enforcement community on financial transactions and tying that stuff together that is part of the effort as well.
This gentleman over here.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time this morning. Ritesh Saxena with Salesforce MuleSoft. My question is for Balaji. You mentioned earlier about sustainable innovation. Could you please elaborate a little bit on that and also share with us how TSA is driving sustainable innovation?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So as you might have heard, the secretary has, provided us with, an ability for us to reallocate some of the fundings to modernize TSA, right? So those have been announced. What we want to do is
You can say you got $1 billion to modernize. It's okay.
So what we want to make sure is it's used properly, right? It's used in such a way that what we are using is sustainable. We are buying things, we are accelerating the innovation that's sustainable, meaning it is repeatable, it's maintainable. We are not just simply doing a flash and then it's off, right? So that's something which we need to work with the industry partners on. For example, the way we had broken down the various aspects of what technology we want to introduce, and we want to bring in the best of the breeds in AI algorithm, for analysis of an image. It's a sustainable model, right? We were bringing in, we're not just saying, hey, we want to buy the whole thing and then leave it up to the vendors to do it. So the other things are like supply chain security and things like that. Those are, working with our partners and working with DHS CIO office and CISO office to make sure our supply chain is sustainable, right? So the other thing that we are looking at is, CIO McLeod has talked about enterprise licenses, enterprise initiatives. So not have our own, for example, the data fabric layers, so to have it at the enterprise level, level identity fabric. That's part of his initiative. That's sustainable for us. Looking at enterprise license across the board for case management. You bring in Salesforce. There is also other competitors of yours. How are we using across the board, right? Like, what is our model for enterprise licenses? We are working very closely with DHS CNP office, our CNP office, as well as to figure out what that sustainable model needs to be. So we are looking at every layer of sustainability. Even though it's technology related, it has, chief counsel's office, the privacy office, the contract office, all of those things. For our operational technology, it is very much an important aspect that we are looking at the program management office to see what that model is going to look like. How are we going to bring in those, innovation, many of which are like embedded systems that we need to figure out how that IT is going to deal with that. So those
Next question. Right here. Try to get to as many as we can. We want to leave about 3 or 4 minutes at the end. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. Boyd Brown with Astrion. Everybody on the panel, and I'm sure a lot of folks throughout the day are going to talk about, the technology we have, the technology we're trying to acquire, and how we get those two different sets integrated into the enterprise and how it operates. All of that's really screaming for a pretty robust test and evaluation effort. Do you see the test and evaluation effort more centralized at the headquarters level within S&T? Do you see it broken up across different agencies or some combination thereof?
Fire away.
I would say some combination thereof, right? So it depends on what is at the enterprise level we want to bring in. For example, the biometric matching and other things, we are working very closely with the department. We have components that have led that effort, so we work closely with them. But when it comes to operational technology, we are working with the airports. We are working with private parties to see if we can do operational testings and evaluation at a faster rate. Like, for example, cross-screening, remote screening technology. We are not going to wait for some enterprise-level initiatives. We're going to work with them. So it's a combination of those. And as far as the software and software releases go, we work very closely with our, the contracted vendors to see whether it is, agile methodology and other methodology to, test it out. And when it comes to collaboration, we are extremely at the height of the collaboration when it comes to, say, passing on the data, common vetting, common understanding of what the data needs to be. We are working closely with ICE and the CBP and others because that's part of our DHS initiative that's been asked as part of that. So it's an initial step in the data fabric layer. So.
Next question. Try to get to as many of these as we can. Questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Here you go.
Thank you all
We're
for
going to
being
do one
here
more
today.
after this, and then we have a couple more questions for these guys.
Cool. My name is Edward Graham, and I'm the managing editor at NextGov. I wanted to follow up on a question that Luke asked earlier about digital IDs, and a lot of the responses seem to be more that biometrics is the future. As someone who just got the real ID, I had a really hard time actually finding my certified birth certificate, and I know, sometimes it'd be hard to find those, IDs and documents that we got when we were first born. But kind of, digging into the biometric component as well, do you see the future of identity verification as more heavily biometric focused or more, digital ID focused? It seems like some combo is probably the future. And if it is biometric, what regulations or policies or standards need to be set, perhaps on the federal level to kind of, push broader adoption of these tools? I know, for example, for TSA at the airports, it's currently optional, but it seems like, we're moving towards a future where this is going to be a more standard, used form of verification, perhaps in line with digital ID. So I'm just curious about how you see the future of identity verification moving forward.
Yeah, and the standards, even international standards. Let me throw it over to Tim first, and just any perspective on that. And then I know you all have your own point of view.
Yeah, I think from a travel perspective, we've got some folks here that are probably more expert than I am. I think internationally, one of the things that the State Department, obviously, we are tip of the spear with the embassies around the globe. It's coordinating with, our interagency partners and foreign counterparts on, understanding what they're doing. So we have, from an interagency U.S. federal government standpoint, we're part of CIO councils, the Chief Data and AI Officer councils. So it's talking to the different agencies about where are they going with certain things. From an international relations perspective, we regularly have, summits and other things with various technology leaders from our foreign counterparts, focusing on these very topics and understanding where they're moving and comparing notes about technology solutions, business processes, et cetera. So that's what I would say. I can't tell you exactly where it's going and exactly how we're going, but I would say, my short answer is a combination. I think we are definitely modernizing all of our systems and our environments, bringing that data forward to partner up with biometric capabilities.
All right, I have a couple more questions for these folks. It's sort of a combo platter, a bit of a fun question, if you will. For the traveling public at large, right? For the Olympics, well, let's start with the World Cup and then the Olympics, two for each of you. What can one expect to see different than they see today in that environment from your perspective, State Department?
Yeah, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, so I guess sneak preview, and this is available. There's a lot more information about this on state.gov, but collaboration with industry, with our partners like FIFA, obviously the interagency partners, but the FIFA Pass process, right? Giving folks that are trying to travel, that have purchased World Cup tickets, the ability to register through FIFA Pass in coordination with the Department of State and probably many other folks, so that they can kind of get a head start on that visa process if visas are required for them to travel in. So it gives them access to that information, the ability to kind of integrate between our various systems.
But is
really
there a coordination? I mean, if I show up at the airport and say, hey, I got FIFA Pass, is he going to say, so what, get in line? I mean, is there a relationship there, or is it?
Well, ultimately, FIFA Pass is going into the actual visa, right?
Okay,
so it's helping give you a head start if you are trying to travel to the U.S. for the World Cup, a head start to your visa approval.
Perfect.
You still have to go through all the normal
Davies.
controls.
Yeah, I'll touch on that and
See,
answer your question, because I think when it comes, we've had this conversation with FIFA because of the unknown, I guess, volume of fans
Right.
that might be coming to visit. I mean,
First-time travelers, all that.
yeah, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people who might be interested in tickets, but there's only 7 million tickets available for all the matches, right? So, but there's also a sizable foreign population that's coming to support with the teams and the support and the accredited individuals through FIFA. And so what we're working with FIFA on at the ports of entry is that those accredited travelers will have a dedicated processing pathway, right? And that we're trying to work with it so that it doesn't become confusing for fans, because I don't want a flight coming in from a country where everyone on that flight is coming for the World Cup, and then everyone, it doesn't do any good to put them all in the FIFA lane, because they're all still in the same lane together. So just trying to prioritize those people who are the accredited individuals, the ones who are actually part of the matches, separate from the fans. Not that we're not going to process the fans, but we're fairly effective in terms of, even at volume during our summer peak, we don't see high wait times like we used 2 years ago, and we're getting increases in our staffing perspective. So I think we'll be well positioned for the influx of foreign visitors for all the different events that are happening in the summer. The biggest thing that's going to change for us, as I mentioned earlier, is really our GE modernization effort, the seamless walk-through technology. You don't even have to stop at a camera anymore. That's the biggest thing that we're looking to get out before World Cup.
Aaron, any perspective from you?
Yeah, I would just add, building on something I mentioned earlier, is that as we see more of the events get closer, we're going to learn from each of them, and some of the things that we'll be able to see, like in the airports, but also in people's apps that they're using for tickets and for other enrollments, that there's more variety in how travelers are going to be able to use that for a different experience, whether that's wayfinding or enrollment or just commercial activity. And it just really builds on the foundation of what the rest of the panel has been sharing.
Balaji, I know you've got some stuff cooking there for both the World Cup and for the Olympics.
Yeah.
Let's talk World Cup.
Yeah, so we're focusing very much on the customer experience and passenger experience, and through multiple means. And for the question on the digital ID, if you go into the TSA website, there are other acceptable forms of ID, just not the digital ID alone. You have several other forms. So we are going to emphasize working in a partnership on the e-gate, the digital ID, and other forms of ID that are MDOC compliant. On the back end, we are trying to make sure all of our OTs that are necessary are providing the data, the health data, the telemetric data, so that the original question of yours, how do we make sure the proper resources are allocated to move the line and things like that, or we have the data-driven decision that is available to the decision makers. That's another one. So you would see a lot of e-gates on that thing. The other thing that we have talked about is the visitor pass, the gate passes, the golden age of travel, some of these things that are coming up. And also to use our own ID for entering into the event arena and things like that. Working with those partnerships with them is something that we are taking a look at as well.
Looking forward to that. XD, Davis, Balaji, Tim, and Aaron, I really appreciate everything that you all are doing to keep this country safe and give these traveling public folks a great customer experience. And thanks for all you do. And thank you, audience, for participating.